welcome to another episode of Smash Accept YouTube only content. Last week we were talking about our top 12 wide receivers. We broke them down to tiers. Make sure you guys go back and check that episode out. Absolutely on fire. Credit to our guy at Brock Dynasty. Make sure you guys follow him on Twitter. He's making the best YouTube edits, our thumbnails. Awesome guy. Make sure you guys are checking him out. Another awesome guy, my co-host, my main man, Snoog. How you doing today, brother?
Good, Dad. There's no better way to start off the middle of the week than waking and rising and talking RBs with my dude. So I'm
That's
excited.
right,
We crushed the wide receivers last week, and now we're going to give you guys kind of like our rankings and tiers for these running backs in this landscape that's just going to get washed away in 2025.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, right? Before we even start breaking these guys down, is like the 2025 running back class is going to be absolutely huge. There are 5 to 6 guys that are instantly going to be in this top 15, but we wanted to bring you some of our guys, give you some trade ideas, do it just how we do it on Smash Accept. I always start out first. A lot of you guys are like, Dad, you never let Snoog go first. You always like, you take your guy. When you do the rookie draft, you take Caleb. When you do the wide receivers, you take Jefferson. So as a treat, I'm going to let Snoog start out. Who is your RB1 in Dynasty?
Yeah, I think I look at it as a 1A, 1B, 1C, but I think the 1A in this situation, Bijan Robinson. I'm still rolling with Bijan. RB9 finished last year. The Falcons have made a ton of moves. Fully built coaching staff, brought in Kirk Cousins, drafted Michael Penix. They got QB play there now for the future. That's what they lacked last year. They had no red zone opportunity. And Bijan put up like 250 fantasy points, RB9 on that terrible Falcons offense last year. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He can make defenders miss at a high level. He can do it all. He's a 3-down workhorse, generational draft capital, drafted 8th overall. I don't want to say it's an easy pick for me, but the fact that he's on the Falcons for potentially another 4 years in this offense is just beautiful. Like, it's news to my ears. I love Bijan. Good, fresh injury history. Like, nothing too bad besides like that broken arm or leg he had at Texas, but no major tissue injury. So I'm going to roll with Bijan here, even though it is a tier for me.
Yeah, for me, and my RB1 is different than yours right now. And I go back and forth. I waffle with this. But for right now, I cannot take anyone over Breece Hall. Breece Hall, most receptions in the league last year was 76, 590 receiving yards, makeshift offensive line, where they were going with second and third stringers most of the season. Backup quarterback with Aaron Rodgers out. And he's a year coming off ACL. We talk about guys coming off that ACL injury, and you're like, oh, this might not happen. Breece Hall is going to absolutely smash in 2024. Like right now, if you look at my redraft rankings, I have CMC 1, Breece 2, and I have Bijan 3. And this is where Dynasty meets redraft, right? Like, this is what you want, these young elite running backs that are going to put up points. Breece Hall is a guy that I think could easily cross over the 1,000 yards this year, get himself closer to 12 to 1,500. The touchdowns weren't even there, and he was a top 5 running back. Half of his games, an RB1. That's a staple on a horrible offense. Now we get Rodgers back. Book it. Breece Hall is going to be the RB1 in 2024.
Yeah, and what you didn't even mention is how much the Jets improved that offensive line this year.
For sure.
Like they brought in 2 starters from the Ravens. They brought in Tyron Smith from the Cowboys. That's a veteran guy who's usually injured, but that's just a good vet to have, that if he's healthy, he'll be a good protector for Aaron Rodgers there. And he also didn't have Aaron Rodgers there. So this offense is going to get in the red zone a lot more there. So, yeah, I'm excited for Breece Hall. He has RB1 overall ceiling easily in 2023.
For sure.
Or 2024. Number 3, this is easy for me, Jahmyr Gibbs. I mean, I should have my signed jersey hanging up right behind me. Big Jahmyr Gibbs fan, one of my favorite players in the league. He averaged a ridiculous season last year. Like, he was the RB10, missed 2.5 to 3 games. He was probably going to finish top 5 if he played a full 17 games. He was on fire towards the end stretch of the season, even with Dave Montgomery there. At first, it was frustrating because the Lions were kind of holding back on Gibbs, like 28 to 35% snap shares for the first 5 weeks. They finally let him unleash. We saw the results. He's elite. He's generational draft capital. He's on an elite offense, the best offense of the 3 we just mentioned. One of the best offensive lines in the league, tied to Jared Goff, who's a check down merchant. There's so much to love about Gibbs and his situation. Again, another guy that could be on this team for 4 more years with the 5th-year option being a first-round pick. Ben Johnson, mastermind offensive coordinator. Sign me up for Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yeah, and this is still easy. Number 4, Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey's your redraft RB1. There's no way to doubt the talent. You got to look at the age. You got to look at the usage a little bit. Where if something happens in Dynasty, if he were to get injured, he drops drastically. As opposed to the other three, one of those three suffers a major injury. They're going to still be a top 5 running back, right? But Christian McCaffrey would dive considerably. But you look at what he does year in and year out, always over 500 yards, always over 50, 60 receptions. He's number 2 in the NFL in touchdowns, number 1 in first downs. This is a guy that just does it all. Last year, he was an incredible workhorse. They don't really bring in too much. They bring in Garendo, but they still have Elijah Mitchell. It's a Christian McCaffrey show. We're going to run it till the wheels fall off. If you're a contender, you could argue that he belongs in that top tier. For me, it's a tier down. So we had those top 3 in that tier 1. This is the start of tier 2 for me. I have another guy in there that I think you're going to take.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Jonathan Taylor here. I mean, I think it's the safest option here, just to be that RB4, 5-ish in Dynasty. I mean, we've seen the RB1 overall ceiling before in 2021. He's in an elite offense, built O-line, great coaching staff with Shane Steichen there. They got tons of weapons around him to stretch the field and get the ball moving, and they got Anthony Richardson. I know Richardson's a rushing QB. He's probably going to take away some in the ground from JT, especially in the red zone, but JT's just a bell cow running back. Like, he's that Nick Chubb. He's that Ezekiel Elliott type of running back that'll catch 30, 40 passes, but he's going to be a guy that can go for 1,500 yards and double-digit touchdowns. You're not expecting like a 500-point ceiling like you saw from CMC that year, but 350 to 380 is a decent range for him to like hit his ceiling and just be a guy that's an elite producer for your roster. So set me up, 25 years old. Just got the contract there, 3 years for the Colts, so I'm all in on JT.
And that's our next tier break. So for me, when we break up our tiers, and make sure you guys check out our Patreon, we have everything broken down in player equivalents so you guys can make trades, educated trades to move yourself into, smash contention. We have 1, 2, and 3, Bijan, Hall, and Gibbs. They're all worth in Superflex. The 102, they're very similar to Marvin Harrison. I say the 103 plus in every single scenario. We have Christian McCaffrey and Jonathan Taylor, who I have in a tier as 104 to 105. This next group we have is a group of guys that I have in that tier of, there's no one in between there. There's a little bit of gap. You can argue the next guy that I'm going to talk about, but these guys are all in Superflex 108 to 109. I'm not comfortable spending that 106, 107 because in Superflex right now, those are falling into some really nice territory this year. But the guy that I starts out tier 3 for me is Travis Etienne. I know Snoog's going to love that. He had a breakout season in 2023. He has that nice receiving floor. The offense is ascending. They don't add another running back, so it's still just him and Tank Bigsby. So I think this is a scenario where Etienne is going to be another RB1 in 2024, and he's a little bit cheaper than some of these other guys. So I think Etienne has the ceiling to be in that same area as Jonathan Taylor, but I think cost-wise right now, he's in that safe floor where you have him as your RB6 overall, and you get him at good value.
Yeah, exactly. Etienne's just a guy that has such a high ceiling. That's why I've always liked him so much, just in the rushing and in the receiving upside. I would actually put him and this next guy that I'm going to talk about in the tier above with CMC and JT, just at 4, 5, 6, 7. Personally, I think there's a bigger gap between those two with the two that we're going to talk about after the next guy I talk about, and then JT and CMC. So I would throw them up there. Saquon Barkley, he's another guy kind of like CMC, one of the best players on the football field when he's healthy and when he's playing. He finally gets the best situation of his life, best offensive line of his life, and best offense in his life. So Saquon Barkley has that 380 to 400 point ceiling if the Eagles truly just let him fly like they did with Swift. I'd love to see them design some more screens there in Philly, like we saw kind of with like Gainwell getting used and catching passes over Swift. Like, I'd like to see Saquon be that guy that they let get in space, make defenders miss, make big plays, because that's literally his middle name is big playmaker. So Saquon Barkley, still 27 years old, fresh off an injury. He's been elite on a shit Giants team. So I'm all in on Saquon Barkley in this Philly offense, and he has a crazy ceiling.
You flip-flopped on me a little bit there, but that's where the running back rankings right now is. This guy that I'm putting next is, I think, he has dropped a little bit in perception, and that's Devon Achane. Devon Achane led the league in yards per carry. He led the league in 40-plus yard carries. Someone that's absolutely lightning in a bottle, and a lot of people are starting to discount him. The reason they drafted Jalen Wright, and I think that gives a lot of people worry. To me, I think Jalen Wright is the heir apparent to Raheem Mostert as opposed to Devon Achane.
Yeah.
Devon Achane, like Jameer Gibbs, is never going to be a 25 carry guy. But if you get him in an open space, you get him in a scenario where if Mostert goes down, and I think this is just security for him because Mostert is now 32 years old, finished as the RB5, which, we did a show the other day talking about RB buy lows. I mean, he's an absolute steal. But Devon Achane is still the guy there. He's the guy that's going to put up big points. He's the guy that's going to give you league winning weeks at 20, 25 points in PPR. So I'm keeping him in that tier. And I know a lot of people are really starting to move him down. So he's becoming a bit of a discount because they think Jalen Wright is going to take over his spot. I think he's just more Jalen Wright's the number 3.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what it comes down to is Achane is just a guy that he has his own role. Like he's his own self. He's that guy
Mm-hmm.
that they're going to give 10 to 15 carries to, and it's going to be special design plays for him. They're not just
Mm-hmm.
going to stuff him up the middle 3 times, 4 times every drive. Like he's going to get sweeps. He's going to get outside zones. He's going to get all that good stuff. So
For sure. That
that's
was
what I
our
love
RB.
about.
RB8, yours, and we start to differ here a little bit, so we're going to try to keep it there. I think we're on to your RB9 here, which I think is a guy that doesn't get a lot of respect, but should.
Yeah, it's Kenneth Walker for me. I think he's an elite athlete. He's a very talented runner. He has a really high upside. Like his floor is very high. He scored a ton of touchdowns last year. His rookie year, he had 1,000 yards, close to double-digit touchdowns. He could catch the ball decently. He's not a bad pass catcher. I think he's a better pass catcher than Zach Charbonnet because Zach Charbonnet couldn't make a friggin' sponge miss in a phone booth. Kenneth Walker can make anybody miss an open field. So that's what pass catching is to me. Like, okay, you can catch the ball. They all can catch a swing route. Can you make defenders miss? Can you be a space creator? Kenneth Walker is much better at that than Zach Charbonnet. So I think Charbonnet's role is literally just in pass pro and it's like a 1 to 2 down grinder. And then Kenneth Walker's like that Achane plus where he's getting 15 to 20 carries, but it's all like the design sweeps and outside zones and stretch plays and tosses at the goal line. So I'm really high on Kenneth Walker, especially because he's young. He's very talented and he's in a great situation. So sign me up there. And an RB9 is not really too expensive. He's a lot cheaper than the guys we talked about above.
So the next guy, and if I even mention his name, Snoog's going to jump in and say Blake Corum. So I'm throwing that out there already. Kyron Williams, I have above Kenneth Walker, but for me, Kyron Williams at RB10, he is, if you look at a bunch of our shows in the past, he's been in our cells. But as far as dynasty rankings go, you have to have him in your top 10. He's someone that, where we go, Blake Corum season for you. But what he did last year was phenomenal, RB2, and I understand what you're saying. And because you have rankings, and a lot of people, Snoog, they really get in on, oh, well, this is your ranking, so that means you're buying that guy. And that doesn't mean that. You know what I mean? If we can take Kyron Williams, and I think 99% of your dynasty leagues, you can get Kenneth Walker plus for Kyron Williams. That's just where we're at right now. But for me, in that offense, he has the ceiling to be a top 5 running back in 2024. We're going to have to see how things shake out. You have to cut. Unlike Jalen Wright, Blake Corum is someone that I think they really are investing in, and I think he's someone that's going to get some run early on here. So the biggest thing that people have been talking to me about, with Trey Benson and Blake Corum is, oh, well, they're just going to take a back seat. I don't think Kyron Williams and James Conner are going to get their 95% touch rate like they did last year. Like that's just not going to happen. So on to number 11 for you, and this one is a little bit, it's going to be shocking for some of our listeners because, it's someone that doesn't have any experience yet. It's a rookie jumping right into the top 12.
Yeah, I think it's pretty safe to say it's Jonathan Brooks here. I think this is when the landscape starts to get shaken up and it's like, okay, looking at it, who can jump into that top 10? Like, who's that guy that could get up there? I mean, Jacobs is going to be like 27 next year. And then you got like White, who's already like 25. James Cook, who's just a guy that is never going to get a ton of volume. That's the issue with these type of guys is it's like, all right, Brooks is this guy here, got the draft capital, 2nd round pick, team that wants to run the ball, established coaching staff, brand new guy, Dave Canales, who really turned around that Bucks offense last year, brought them to the playoffs, got a playoff dub. This Panthers team is hungry. Like they want to prove that they're not the worst team in the league. They drafted Brooks in the 2nd round. I thought they had more very more needs than that. Yeah. Like they had glaring needs other than running back. And they clearly felt a way about Jonathan Brooks. Like this kid, he's a 3-down back. He has great patience, smooth footwork. he's very Aaron Jones like for me. Like he's a very smooth accelerator, but he wastes no movement when he's running the football. Like he's not doing 3 side steps and like 4 juke moves before he sees a defender. Like he's literally getting 2 inches away and making a side cut and making the guy look foolish. So that's the things I like about Brooks. He's got that receiving upside. Bryce Young's going to be a guy that checks the ball down a lot. I think the situation's just bread and butter for him, and RB11's a safe spot for a kid that's 20 years old.
Yeah, and these are the guys, like we talked about 108 to 109, ETN, Saquon, Kyron Williams, Devon Achane, Kenneth Walker. Now I think we get into this tier here where we start to talk about these are guys that are worth 110 to 112. Xavier Worthy's gone, because I would rather have Xavier Worthy than every single one of these running backs we're going to talk about. But he goes, then we start to talk. Is it Brian Thomas Jr.? Is it Lad McConkey? And if you're a running back needy team, I have no problem taking Jonathan Brooks or some of these other guys that we're going to talk about here in this next tier. And again, it's all about tiers. It's all about finding the right values for your running backs. These are guys that are falling into the 7th round right now in your Superflex startups. We have those rankings also in the Patreon, so make sure you guys check them out. You went with Brooks, talking about Dave Canales. I'm going to the place that he vacated, and I'm taking Rachaad White. And I know a lot of people are down on Rachaad White, but almost 1,000 rushing yards, over 500 receiving yards, someone that is just, I think any kind of competition was going to be a good thing for him because he is a PPR machine. He is someone that's going to be long in this league, and a lot of people really just say they start talking about the efficiency of the run game. But in the receiving game, this guy does his damage. And I think he's someone in this offense. I have no problem paying the 110 to 112 to pick up a guy that had, 60 plus receptions, 500 yards. He's someone that I think is grossly undervalued and someone that I'm going to tear down from one of the other guys. I'm going to go from Achane to White plus. I'm not highly investing in White, but I do think he's going to have another fantastic 2024 season. So that's our top 12. We got 3 more guys here that you and I both believe are worth a 25 first. And again, 25 firsts are going to be crazy valuable. Your 24 season, your 24 rookie picks are over. A lot of people in a lot of drafts, 25s are going to start cranking up as soon as they realize there are 5, 6, 7 running backs with Judkins and Henderson and some of these other guys that are just going to ascend. But we got 3 more guys that we're willing to invest in 25 first in, and then it's all seconds. It's all different dynasty trades. If you guys want to hit us up on dynasty trades, make sure you guys check us out on Twitter. I'm at Dynasty Dad FF. He's at FF Snoog. Let's finish out these last 3 with some fun.
Yeah, I love the Rachaad White love because I was a RB3 guy. Like he was my RB3 in that 2022 rookie class right after Breece Hall and Walker. So
feels good. RB4 overall if you go in not in points per game, but for the season. So,
just feels good to see that, to see that guy that was very undervalued during the rookie. I was getting him in the 3rd round of rookie draft. So
for sure.
Otherwise, Josh Jacobs here for me is my RB13. Yeah. I think you could probably argue him over White if you wanted to, depending on like where your team is and if you're really looking for that elite ceiling.
He's on Brooks too. Like he's just. I think in 2024 he's gonna. All of these guys. I think Brooks is the last guy where we're not talking about a 2-year window, right? Like those guys, Brooks and above. Down here, we're starting to talk about a 1 to 2 year window. Despite the age, we're gonna try to crush it with these 2 years. And Jacobs is that.
Yeah, exactly. And so like you could argue Jacobs 11 or 12 or even 13, depends on your league, what you want to do. But this is a guy that he's actually on the best offense he's ever played in. Very like Saquon Barkley. This Packers offense is hungry. They're ready to run the ball. They made it far in the playoffs. They got QB play. They got the coaching staff. They built that offensive lineup. They brought in Jordan Morgan in the draft, right tackle out of Arizona. They're ready to go. They wanted that like bell cow workhorse running back that could stay healthy that Aaron Jones couldn't be anymore. Josh Jacobs is that guy. This is a guy that can take 300 touches a year. We've seen the ceiling of like 1,600 plus rushing yards. We've seen that floor of low-end RB1 multiple years. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's on a 4-year contract, even though there is a hard out after year 1. But if he balls out, I don't get why they wouldn't keep him for another year. So I'm excited about Josh Jacobs. I know they brought in Marshawn Lloyd, but it's Jacobs' backfield, and at least for this year. So I'm excited for a guy that is cheap like this that you can get that's guaranteed 280 to 300 touches.
And you can tell Snoog's steering the ship on the running backs today because I'm getting all the guys I know he doesn't want, and I'm taking James Cook. And I know James Cook is not one of your guys as well, but you can't argue he was an RB1 last year. Buffalo does not invest heavily in any running backs, just like Rashad White gets a lot of people say Bucky Irving's there, but the draft capital wasn't there to say he's getting pushed aside. The draft capital for Ray Davis is not there to say James Cook is getting pushed aside. I think James Cook is going to be a little bit more featured than he was last year. I think they want to keep Josh Allen as upright as possible. We say that every year, right? But it doesn't always happen. I think James Cook is a nice, safe RB2 that you can plug in there that has RB1 upside. He does have some down weeks, unfortunately, but I think in a Buffalo offense, this is someone where once we start talking about some of these other running backs after we get outside the top 15, then it's like, oh, the offense isn't right or they're aging. James Cook he's got the youth and he's in the offense, so I'll take him at RB14. One more guy who I know you're in love with here at the RB15 spot.
I might have to send you a fruit basket in the mail for giving me all my guys today. Good morning. DeAndre Swift. Nice and easy. Let's finish off strong. This is a guy he's put all the pieces together, or he hasn't put all the pieces together, but he's put piece by piece together. He's had 1,000 yards rushing. He's had like 60 to 70 receptions. He paced for 70-plus receptions in his first 3 seasons. This is a guy that scored double-digit touchdowns as a rookie and then hasn't scored double-digit touchdowns since. If he puts it all together, damn it, he's going to be an elite running back. Like, he's got all the talent in the world. He has the contract there in Chicago. I think this is his best situation yet. The Eagles could have been if they utilized him more in the passing game. He just didn't get anything in that passing game. And this is a guy that can easily catch 60 to 70 passes. Like, he's an elite space creator. He's great after the catch. The Bears, I think, is the best situation. I mean, there's not much for him to compete with. He's the veteran guy in the running back room. He got the contract. He's going to be a guy that could probably see 1,000 yards, maybe like 220 to 230 touches. He'll score touchdowns because he's not going to get vultured by Hurts in the tush push every single time he gets them down to the 1 yard line. And he can be a guy that is catching passes from his rookie quarterback out of the backfield. So I'm excited for Swift. I think it's finally going to be the year that he puts it all together. And I know we've been saying this for like 4 years now. This 2020 running back class needs to have another producer, and it's not going to just be Jonathan Taylor with how talented that class was. So DeAndre Swift, stamped approved. I'm all in.
And it's interesting here because then I think Pacheco and Trey Benson come really close, and then it's just aging running backs. And I think Trey Benson, if I had to pick one guy that isn't in this group that will be in the top 12 by the end of the season, he's a James Conner injury away. So make sure you guys are paying attention in the early second of your rookie drafts to go out and get a guy like Trey Benson. So thank you so much for checking us out. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. Thanks again for tuning in, and enjoy the process.